The panel. That was a great discussion. So continuing on the theme of blockchain, it's my pleasure to introduce our eminent panelists for the Fireside chat in AI and blockchain in the area of trade finance, cross-border payments, and international banking. Folks, it'll be great if we could do the discussions outside. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to introduce Ken Rosenberg. He's the Senior Vice President and Head of International Banking at Bridge Bank. Ken has over 30 years of experience across 35 countries in international trade and finance. He's an expert in trading company operations and a national thought leader in the area of third-party inventory, ownership of goods in a supply chain. Prior to Bridge Bank, Ken has held senior leadership positions at Wells Fargo, Exigent Trading, and Silicon Valley Bank, amongst others. Ken is joined by Sanjay Mody. Sanjay is the head of global operations and information technology at East West Bank. Prior to that, he was the head of global operations of Silicon Valley Bank for over 8 years. Sanjay has also held several senior leadership roles at JP Morgan and Bank of America. Welcome, Ken and Sanjay, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm the former. I'm not presently with East West Bank. Just a correction. Thank you. Ken, it's a pleasure to chat with you.
A pleasure to be here, and thank you for having us here today.
This is an area that we're going to talk about today, which is international trade finance and the use of all these emerging capabilities in that space. This is a very target-rich environment. You know, international trade, the exchange of goods and services have been happening since time immemorial. However, the manner in which we conduct that flow, the business, is also still in the Stone Age. It is very paper intensive, very bureaucratic, and every area of innovation that has been talked about today is applicable in international trade, from credit risk intermediation, trust intermediation, the flow of goods between countries, rules, regulations, the flow of payments, data, information. All of this come together in international trade. There's a lot of innovation also happening in this space. We've both been around in this space for quite some time. And we have seen a number of efforts over the years come and go, frankly. And the basic paper-intensive, bureaucratic nature of the business still not has dramatically changed. Of course, incremental improvements have been made over the years, but it's still being conducted and heavily reliant on papers and communication and coordination between groups of individuals and parties. But there are some encouraging trends more recently, and I will ask Ken, who has actually been quite engaged in a lot of these developments over the last few years, to share his insights into what his observations are as to what the emerging trends are. Ken?
Well, thank you. Just to put it in perspective, as to what Bridge Bank does, Bridge Bank is a division of Western Alliance Bank, but we manage the international banking activities for all of Western Alliance, which is a regional bank in the 3 southwestern states, headquartered in Phoenix. My office is in San Jose, and as I say, manage the international banking for all of that. All of the Western Alliance clients. From our standpoint, international banking consists of 3 things. The first one is payments. You've heard a lot about payments in the discussions here today. And frankly, my head of my foreign exchange team says, you could move money faster by putting it in a suitcase and carrying it on an airplane than you can today in the international payment system. So we're looking for a solution there And there are a number of different solutions that we've been engaged in discussions with. The second part of what we do is the old traditional trade finance, which is letters of credit or collections. And again, that's a very manual, paper-based operation, taking the documents and examining documents to make sure they match the letter of credit language and so forth. So we're looking for ways to speed up that process. If you're looking at how long does it take to get paid on a letter of credit, every bank that handles the documents has 5 days just to examine those documents and move them to the next stage. So there's a lot of delay in that process as well. And the final part of that, the third part, is that we are financing supply chains. In our client base, which is basically technology companies in the Silicon Valley region, most of that is financing foreign accounts receivable. But there is also an element of financing inventories that are in transit and in foreign locations waiting for delivery. And there needs to be a methodology to track that process in order for us to be able to really safely finance a supply chain. So those are the three areas that we're looking at.
You talked about letters of credit, collections, paper-based processes. And as you already know, and some of you may already know as well, 80% of the world's trade, international trade, bypasses banks entirely. Especially at least bypasses letters of credit and collections. And is conducted on an open account basis, right? And a lot of solutions are now emerging, supply chain finance platforms being one, but there are a number of solutions that are emerging that will facilitate the movement of goods as well as the payments and the movement of information. Can you talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah, I've been working a little bit with a company called SkuChain, which is a blockchain company that is looking to provide a platform for supply chain finance, enabling the lender to know where the inventory is at any point in time, know what the ownership of that inventory is at any point in time, know when it converts from an inventory owned by one participant to effectively an invoice that it can be financed that is due from the ultimate buyer. And so the blockchain technology will enable the financier to actually have clear visibility of where that inventory is, when it converts to a receivable, and when the payment is intended to be made. So that's one use I see of blockchain technology, is the ability to track that inventory and the receivable right through to the payment process, and then it ties into the payment process.
And have you looked at some of these cross-border payment providers such as Ripple, and have you seen any traction in adoption as well as some pitfalls?
Yeah, we continue to, actually yesterday I was in Phoenix at our headquarters, and we were being pitched by Ripple and their payment system. The thing that I still am questioning and looking to see when the solution comes is that most of these, if not all, are point-to-point. And so even though the system of notification to debit the account and pay the beneficiary on the other end is much more rapid and presumably secure, we still have to sit there and have a Nostra account in the foreign bank where the money lies in order for the payment to be made to that beneficiary. So we're still looking for how do we get the scale that will allow us to really expect that there's going to be a blockchain solution to the payments process. Certainly Ripple has a number of banks on their platform now. I think it's working successfully, but it still is point to point, and as far as I can tell, it still requires a Nostra account at the other bank. So that's still something that needs to be resolved in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they've made a huge leap forward, no question, in terms of effecting the payments internationally in seconds and minutes as opposed to days and weeks, clearly. And I think their claim is that they are optimizing the balance requirements in these accounts that, as you said, are still required by the banks to maintain. So clearly, it's a good, I believe, adoption of the blockchain technology. It clearly solves pain points, but not, as you say, yet in a way where accounts are not required.
Yeah. They do have I should mention that there is there's kind of three components to what they're pitching. And the third level, they do have a liquidity solution that is using their cryptocurrency as the basis for providing that liquidity solution. I've yet to see how that really works, but I think that is possible that that's going to be a way to avoid having all those Nostra accounts with the correspondent bank.
But as one of the earlier panelists talked about, the payments actually is a culmination of the process. You know, the entire pain and all the challenges in business processes before, not to underestimate the pain associated with the payments process, but in terms of the actual exchange of goods and services and the transaction that needs to be reviewed, checked, authorized before that payment can be made is where the real challenges are. And you've seen some AI-based companies taking a look at that. What are your observations there?
Well, we've just recently implemented a new software as a service foreign exchange platform. We had a legacy system for quite a number of years. We're looking for an upgrade and a solution. And we engaged with a fairly new fintech called SwapsTech. SwapsTech is headquartered in Raleigh-Durham, Charlotte area. And we ran into them at the BAFT conference here a few years ago. I was at that conference and ran into Bhushan Rangachari, who heads up the SwapsTech, and found that they had a platform that we really liked the looks of it, particularly from the customer experience standpoint. Clients able to come on and actually activate it, carry out a trade online, which is then in the back office, it is automatically completed and the transfer and the payment made without human intervention at this point. So it's increased our efficiency dramatically as well as improved the customer experience. So we found there's another fintech type company that is a vendor to us as opposed to being a customer that we are very pleased with. Actually, we were the third client for them. So we were willing to step up and take some risk because of the nature of the business, and have been very pleased with the results.
Can I have you looked at some of these solutions that I've heard about? I don't know the players yet that are looking into the examination of the letter of credit documents to see if the documents comply with the terms of the LC and any movement in that space?
Yes, we've also seen, again, back at the Bankers Association for Finance and Trade, we have ran into a company there a company called Pelican, that is promoting the use of artificial intelligence to assist in both the examination of the documents under a letter of credit, as well as the KYC and anti-money laundering compliance requirements that we have. And so that's an interesting one. We're not big enough in the letter of credit business to make it worthwhile, but I think that there's a real opportunity there. And one of our clients in Southern California is also in that business, a company called DataSkill, and they also have adopted the artificial intelligence to be able to learn as they go in examining documents and improving, I should say, the efficiency of document examination and compliance.
And given that we both come from banks that provide, or at least in my case, provided solutions to technology companies, our banks generally did not get into the commercial trade business as much as the standby letter of credit product, which is, for the uninitiated, it's a product where the bank literally stands by the performance obligation of the customer. So in case there is a default on the part of the customer, the bank actually steps in and makes the payment. So, both of us, majority of what we did was issue those performance backing standby letters of credit. And there is also, I'm hearing and I'm reading some more material on it, is about the adoption of smart contracts using blockchain technology. And have you looked at any of those?
Yeah, that's another area that SKU has gotten into, and I've been go back. I keep referring back to Bankers Association for Finance and Trade, BAFT, which is the trade finance alliance or association, and I'm on a committee there for trade finance. And one of the things that we found that SKU is doing is they have just announced last week that they have established a methodology for doing the standby letters of credit using blockchain technology. And that's being done in conjunction with BAFT, where BAFT is helping through a committee of bankers, trade bankers, look at how do we make sure that we are compliant and have an agreed methodology across the banking industry. So they're looking at putting together a agreed protocol for how the standby letters of credit would be handled under a blockchain technology. So that's underway, and they're beginning their first use case, if you will, or pilot program with a couple of banks here by the end of the year.
Well, thank you, Ken. We are terribly over time. I just want to say that there is just a lot of opportunity in this space. It's an incredible confluence where all of the innovation can be applied from, as I began by saying, from identity, authorization to trust, credit, payments, flow of information. All of this converge in this space. Logistics, movement of goods, the SKU pieces, how you track inventory, all of these pieces come together in this space. It's target rich. And with that, I'll open up for questions. Arvind.
So thank you, Ken, and Sanjay, sharing your can you answer, you addressed that partly just now with your last comment about this committee thinking about a protocol, but without a community, without an ecosystem, you cannot validate an LC until and unless all these different members who are part of that whole transaction, they're all in a blockchain. So how do you fire that chain up? What are your thoughts about that?
So there is a consortium, right? R3 has just, what, about 10 banks have signed up?
Yeah.
With the consortium. The platform is called Marco Polo. A number of big global multinational banks, in fact, Standard Chartered is here in the audience. They are one of them. So, you know, these banks are coming together and are actually putting this consortium together to actually address some of these problems. There is also a competing private entity that is also signing up banks, and interoperability and all those issues will arise later on. But the debate right now is there a consortium-based approach where, you know, all these banks will come together and then they'll have to agree and then they'll have to participate, versus a private entity which is now signing up banks and actually putting transactions in production now as we speak. So there is that divide that's going on, which will take some time to settle down. You know, some banks have signed on to the private entity because of time to market, thinking that they could, you know, they want to actually see transactions in production and actually go to market rather than charting the course for the future, entering into a consortium and developing products and capabilities. So those things are competing right now. We'll see which one prevails.
Yeah, the working group at BAFT is engaging with the legal counsel and with the group of banks, and all of the banks that are a part of BAFT are working to put together that common basis for how we would be able to enforce a blockchain-enabled letter of credit or collection, whatever.
Any other questions?
Or do you think like the government, like IRS or census data can use the blockchain technology?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't know how to answer that question. I'm not a blockchain expert.
So when I talk about the international banking, for me it's, even though I spend $1 million in some other country, but I come here, I'm not get $5,000 credit, right? Because I don't have the credit score. Do you see in future where the global banks kind of connect not only the credit history being exchanged, which can also help for the KYC? Do you see that coming in the future where a consumer, wherever, doesn't matter which country he goes in, the credibility of what he does in every country is centralized?
So Rajesh, you have a brilliant business idea. You should pursue it. It's a problem that remains unsolved. I think blockchain can address that, but you know, I mean, we face that even today. If you're a credit-worthy individual in one country and you come to the United States, as many immigrants do or students do, with very good credit histories, those credit histories are not today transferable. You are an unknown entity in this country. And so, you know, you'll have to get a secured credit card. You won't get a credit card with a credit limit. That problem still remains unsolved. And you know, we've talked about it. Some of that is being addressed in some institutions, right, where they have a footprint in both locations. And then what they're doing is that they are doing the KYC and they're onboarding the clients in that country, and then using technologies, as you know, for ID verification and credit underwriting, and bringing that here to instantaneously give them credit for credit cards as well as mortgages. So that's evolving. But it's because the institution has either an arrangement or physical presence in that country. There isn't some overarching body that will facilitate that. Yeah?
What we find is, from a business banking standpoint, I don't think of it from a consumer standpoint, but from a business standpoint, companies that have their headquarters or in a foreign country who are coming here and need credit, usually the way we do that is to use the standby letter of credit methodology and have the parent open a standby letter of credit in favor of the bank, and then the bank can make a line of credit available to that entity here in the U.S. based on that guarantee effectively from the parent.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone for the patience. We're running a few minutes late. Now it's time for the startup challenge. We have a